Good morning. May I start by expressing my condolences to the family Yantate Thabo Masebe, in particular Bana Bantate Masebe in Wabona. We are here, I would like to say, to be with you in your loss. And I believe that the Lord will be with you and keep you as he has done this far. May I recognize the former Deputy President, Lynn, and then the Premier of the province, the ministers who are here, MCs and MCs, mayors, and everybody. I just want to recognize you that Fabiaza has already done the protocols. My task now is to open this service with a word of prayer as we send off this servant of the people. The sermon will come later. Let us pray. Oh God, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, although we know that you are fit, although we also know that no one has lived forever on this earth, we are not able to accept this reality of a loss because it was never your original plan. Whenever death strikes us, God, we end up with a deep pain that is inexplicable. Because we're just human. As our Creator, you know better our feelings. Umaluje kulukulu, we rely entirely on you because we are not human. You are not a human being, but you are God. You are the God who is all-knowing, everywhere present and powerful. You know the depth of our pain, especially in the family, and know exactly what to do to take the pain away, heal our wounds, and empower us to move on into the future, especially for the family. In Psalm 147:3, it says, you heal the brokenhearted and you bind up their wounds. Heal their broken hearts and bind their wounds. We also pray for the victims of the floods in KwaZulu-Natal and in the Eastern Cape and other places, and the fires in the Western Cape. Be with them as well, wherever they are. Strengthen them to go over the pain we're going through. Be with us in this service. Let it be part of the therapy to heal all of us. Strengthen the family to walk this last journey, Thabo Masebe, as the beloved of the people and the family. Bless everyone who will be taking part in this service and the various service, and use each one of them as your instrument to console the family and lessen their grief. We ask all this in your holy name. Amen.
As Edgar indicated, you remain deeply touched by our presence and countless messages of support that we continue to receive. On behalf of the Gauteng Provincial Government and the Masebe family, we appreciate deeply so your presence and the willingness to walk with us as we prepare to send our beloved DG, father, uncle, and comrade to his final resting place. We are grateful that the South African government has accepted our request as the Gauteng government through the office of our Premier for honor Comrade Thabo Masebe with a special official provincial funeral. As we prepare to begin our journey, kindly accept our sincerest condolences on behalf of government and all institutions that have sent their messages to us. We still politely and respectfully so plead with you to observe all COVID protocols at all times. We are now moving to the next part of the reading of the obituary, and we'll be requesting Mr. Thabo Masebe and the family representative, Mme Chao, to come and read the obituary.
The obituary program director, having acknowledged the protocol, will start as follows. When Thabo Masebe passed on, we received many messages. Amongst those messages was a poem by Makulu Lidwala. It is in your package. It reads thus: it is a deadly dark cloud, saturated to the brim with thunder and lightning, waiting for the ideal moment to arrive, to flood the pathways and highways, just to add to the pain the nation endures, because of vengeance, of the saturated dark. No wonder these heavy dark clouds hang a stone thrown above our hearts. The land takes a trouble. Friend and family succumb to the demonic wish of the saturated dark. Some watch in disbelief, others don't. Thabo watched and saw the destructive power of a nature. Who knows perhaps the power of a natural force was just too heavy to watch and unable to help. How much of that pain was because of the resurgence of a rage in his inner body, because of the distance between him and the victims? Timid, a towering soul, never touched from head to toe by opponents, always on the march, on the straight and narrow, to serve, to suffer, to sacrifice, even when the dark clouds saturated and cloud hung inches above his head. The obituary says, during the early evening of the 18th April 2022, our beloved comrade Thabo Masebe suddenly and unexpectedly left us. Not surprisingly, Masebe died with his boots on, with the principal tour of trade, the laptop close by. The outpouring grief and tribute by all who came in contact with him is a testimony to the impactful life of a leader of our people who was well respected and loved. Thabo Masebe represented the best of a generation, an age-old, which the then President Oliver Reginald Tambo named the young lions of our struggle. It is this generation born at the height of apartheid who instead of being yoked by the oppressive system, chose to define their generational mission as that of defeating this crime against humanity and ushering in the freedom in our lifetime. Thabo Masebe was born in the hospital on the third born of the late Elias Chamano and Miss Elsie Chidiro Masebe on the 25th August 1964. The family stayed at Mashao village until they relocated to Shigwezi and then to Lekane, where he started his primary school at Machumu Primary School and proceeded to Shikane High Primary School. Then Chitakaka Junior Secondary School and matriculated at Matadi Primary School respectively. He studied at the University of Venda, where he soon became portentized and politicized, joining the Azanian student movement Azaso, now known as SASO. A towering intellectual, he was able to combine the theory learned in classes with the concrete conditions of a country that was changing. The mid to late 80s was a time when universities were in turmoil. Students were frequently persecuted for fighting for their rights and their political activities in opposition to the evil system of apartheid, but were never deterred, and they put up a formidable resistance. Comrade Thabo was part of a machinery that ensured apartheid and its Bantustan administration were rather than baffling. He led from the front in mobilizing the youth in action against the Venda, Kazanguru, and the world government. He played a key role in the formation of various structures, organs of people's power in the Northern Transvaal, mobilizing workers, youth and communities. He was part of the Northern Transvaal Action Committee. The Northern Transvaal people Public Servants Union, Mubiri, and many other community-based structures. Comrade Thabo was able to struggle across various generations, ensuring that the youth are taught and trained in correct politics of the Congress movement. Always a humble player, Thabo played an important role in the activities of the Peter unit, recruiting many young people into the movement. He became part of the Northern Transvaal Youth Congress of Taiko and was central in the activities of the United Democratic Front, Northern Transvaal. When it was time to re-establish and rebuild the ANC in the Northern Transvaal, again Comrade Thabo proved to be equal to the task. It was a task that requires the organizing ability and skills of the likes of Thabo Masebe, Mutupi Palipare, Louis, Joyce Mabudabas, John Padani, and many others. Thabo understood his station in society and the role he played in society. Like many young people of his age group, he sacrificed selflessly his own education. Comrade Thabo made it his mission to champion the access to education through the Education Aid Program, EAP, particularly to those who were brutalized by the apartheid regime. Comrade Masebe ensured that bursary support to many student activists who today are senior professionals and senior public servants and public officials. To this end, Comrade Thabo acquitted himself very well in ensuring that the branches of the African National Congress and its structures are launched in the entire Northern Transvaal. He became part of the process of integrating comrades from exile, from prison, the underground, into the structures, and ensuring that the Northern Transvaal become a united and progressive region. Like others of his generation, Thabo knew that before he could become a student, he was a member of the oppressed community. He became active in building and growing the youth and student congresses and was central to the formation of the South African Youth Congress cycle. Launched in the heart of the state of emergency in Cape Town in 1987. Comrade Thabo rose to the ranks, through the ranks of Senegal in the then Northern Transvaal. His generation was instrumental in building and consolidating the United Democratic Front, as earlier stated. Along the then young lions, namely Jeremiah Molo, Kassan Matane, Eugene Masisi, and Ellen Chale, and many others. He was part of the leadership of the Northern Transvaal in the 1990s, who after their beginning took the debate on the relaunch of the ANC youth forward. It was this debate that saw Senegal Congress in 1990 in Panama resolved not only to complement the soon to unfold process of negotiations with mass struggles, but also to rebuild the African National Congress into a formidable force and the voice of the South African youth. Comrade Thabo and his peers had to traverse across the country to convince young people to accept the decision of the movement to suspend the armed struggle. This was a difficult problem to many young revolutionaries at the time. The Provisional Youth Committee led by Peter Mugawa, Rapumuleka, with colleagues from the youth section traveled the length and breadth of the country to organize and relaunch the ANC youth branches. In the northern Transvaal, they found a well-oiled machinery led by Comrade Thabo and others. Their comrades the comrades also hosted the relaunching of the ANC Youth League in Kwandalele in 1991. It's very important for the young ones because there are two activities between the Cameroons and Kwandalele at the time. We have always seen that these are used interchangeably. Program director, I thought I must emphasize that point. It is always a leader of young people in the Northern Transvaal who enabled the Congress Youth League to combine both rural and urban struggles. He helped to clarify the progressive role that the institutions of traditional leadership can contribute to the unfolding liberation in our country. His dynamic involvement in popular youth work, underground activity, mass mobilization, so he will play a decisive role in the establishment of the progressive mass organization across the whole country. At the historic Congress of the ANC Youth League in 1991 in Kwandalele, Comrade Thabo Masebe was elected to the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League. The NDC also elected him to serve as a member of the Youth League National Working Committee, leading with Peter Mugawa, Rapumuleka as Secretary General, Mpolo as Deputy Secretary General, the late Ignatius Jacobs as Treasurer General, and as additional members Nyama Zeliboy, Andrew Peter, Derek Masuku, Pasman Kachan, Joel Janzi, Tawat Senso Makweta, Jerry Ajundido, and Philip Peter. The early 90s were one of the peak moments in the existence of the ANC Youth League. The multi-party negotiations were in full swing and was also the political and third force violence in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. This leadership of the ANC Youth League, with Comrade Masebe as the integral part, ensured that the youth voice were present in the negotiations, pushing for the leadership to ensure that the people are not left defenseless in the face of violence by forming self-defense units, and that the tactic of mass mobilization remains relevant. Together with Pasman Kachan and Derek Masuku, Comrade Thabo represented the Youth League in the ANC negotiations committee. He was also part of those who argued for the meeting between the ANC Youth League and the IFP brigade as necessary to bring the end to violence and build lasting peace in KwaZulu-Natal. It was during this period that Comrade Thabo started his journey as one of the foremost communicators in South Africa. Along with Pasman Kachan, Edwin Mabitsela, they formed the nucleus of the ANC Department of Information and Publicity, DIP, promoting the programs and positions of the ANC Youth League and the ANC, and subsequently starting the ANC magazine, Youth League magazine, The Horizon. They also invested in training young communicators in the provinces of the ANC Youth League to ensure that when they usually communicate, it does so with clarity, being unapologetic, without being populist. This contingent of young communicators played an important role in the ANC first elections campaign in 1994. The development of its message and engaging the media and public on the important. It played an important role in the development of the message of engaging the media and the public on the importance of these elections and the ANC slogan of better life for all. The ANC generational transition of 1994 saw Comrade Pidamka, Tawama Gumisa Kondo, Rapuleka, Jericho, Ignatius Jacobs, Vusima Vimbela, the Poor Peters, Haveli Koro, and others living the ranks of the youth movement. Comrade Thabo was elected as the ANC Treasurer General, with Lulu Johnson as the President and Protocol as Secretary General. He continued to lead the ANC League as a member of the National Working Committee until 1998. As Treasurer General, Comrade Thabo Masebe initiated investments by the ANC League and advised members and colleagues on financial interests. He taught many of us personal savings, investing in property, and other instruments. His social contribution was highlighted when he was part of a team assigned the responsibility to create and immortalize the June 1976 student uprising. Together with other comrades, they advocated and created the Hector Peterson Memorial in Sokoto. The memorial still stands at the park and is internationally recognized as a symbol of the struggles of young people and students in our country. It also serves as a recognizable political tourist attraction of our country and a source of education about the history of our struggle. As he exited the ANC, Comrade Thabo started his career as a government communicator and public servant. At various points during the last 20 years, he served as spokesperson for the Gauteng Premier, the then Gauteng Premier, Bazimashlo, Deputy President, and former President Khalima Mtante, Premier David Mapura. He was also the head of the International and Media Licensing Unit of Government Communication and Information System, GCIS. Comrade Thabo's ability to communicate positions of government and that of the ANC was based on his deep knowledge of society we live in and the struggle of the people of South Africa. He was thus able to communicate on a range of diverse issues. This includes responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC report in 1998, the situation in Zimbabwe in 2008, and more recently, in social services with life is debating the PPE scandal as well as the complex issues such as the approach to the Gauteng city race. Premier Mapura formally explained, and I quote, you, Comrade Thabo would always proceed from the premise that if we want to build trust with the public, we must be honest and fair. When government has gotten it wrong, we must always admit that we have gotten it wrong. In his responsibility As a communication and a media activist, he contributed enormously to the battle of ideas, always putting progressive ideas and articulating the principle of the liberation movement. He reached out to many journalists, opinion makers, and was central in forging links with the progressive media and narrative initiators. He had time for his counterparts in the media, spent time networking, assisting them in understanding the standpoint and the thinking of both ANC and government on various issues. Comrade Thabo Masebe performed his duties with diligence, commitment, leading and supporting the teams that he was in charge of as a senior public servant, and was always available and accessible. He was highly regarded as a reliable, sober, always patient, calm, and incorruptible. Perhaps I must repeat this. He was always regarded as reliable, sober, always patient, calm, and incorruptible. There was no task too big or too small to be performed by him. Following a request by President Mkhitaryan, he joined the presidency at a challenging time after the recall of President Kaunda. Articulating how government was performing its duties and managing transition became his focus. He was able to articulate the responsibilities and the work with ease because he understood the policies and programs of both government and the governing party. As a diligent public servant, he did his own research work on any task given to him. He led his team to perform beyond expectation. He treated and engaged both his senior and junior colleagues with the same attitude and respect. This applies to ministers, premiers, MECs, at national and provincial level. With him, any statement and pronunciation of government work had to reflect a good understanding of the intent of government and the implication for the public. Thus, he meticulously scrutinized every statement, every paragraph, every sentence without compromise. Comrade Thabo was concerned and said about the state of the ANC. We are told we must not speak for the dead, but we know some of us who have always been with him. So Comrade Thabo was concerned and said about the state of the ANC, the organization that we grew up in and became his family until the last breath, his last breath on earth. He spoke openly about the state of the African National Congress and the divisions that are evident and its impact on transformation agenda of the country and service delivery to our people. Comrade Thabo was a loyal patriot and one of the finest leaders of the ANC. He was indeed a servant of the people. Comrade Thabo loved sports. He was an Eden Kaizer Chiefs fan, Manchester United, golf, and F1 support. He loved his wine. and going to the gym and was passionate about golf. At the time of his passing, Comrade Thabo was the Deputy Director General responsible for the government communications and information system in Gauteng. He was also the acting Director General in Gauteng government. He is survived by his two sons, Chamano Masebe, Masebe Masebe, his three sisters, Mulebuke, Muereba, Florence, his two brothers, Kumula and Baby Masebe. God from the Thabo, God servant of the people. Children will be married. Your journey is a fulfilled one. You gave the people of South Africa the best you had. Kama Boreka Mukowaka Gumani Ngane Nimuri Panda Auchenami Kakame. Thank you very much.
Good morning to our honorable elders, our honorable countrymen. Good morning to everybody, the mourners, our children, and our grandchildren. I greet all the people observing protocol. I am speaking as a sister to town, my I hear you calling my the other way around. It's my Mook. He is my uncle's son. Papa Wamina and Papa Thabo are brothers, sharing the same father but different mothers. We come from a big family. We come from a very big family. Right down at Merve. That's where our grandfathers and grandmothers were staying. That's where Papa Chaman grew up with my father. So we are here as a family. We are mourning a great elephant. This elephant comes from Limpopo, right in the heart of Limpopo. Thabo Masebe. There's a mountain just at the Limpopo River called Homba. It is the mountain Masebe. So we come here crying. We are in tears. The elders could not come. So they can't come. They are there at home now, crying, thinking of Chaman, Nachililo, Nawanawo, Natao, Maim. We missed Thabo for many years. We missed Thabo because Thabo was the child of the government. We used never to know where Thabo is. If I want to tell you the truth, Thabo was always on duty. So me take a mwana wa hina kale. Hakeza yoko atirela vanhu va tiko leri. Today we have come to bury the son. Papa wena ayi mwana wa Sokhweni Mayimu. Today we are in tears. We have lost a great man. We have come to accompany Thabo to his last journey. Bani ba timbyela Thabo, mwana wa Chililo na Chamani, ku ri u tlela kahle, u famba hi kurhula. Johannesburg is too far for us. When we used to come here by train, we used to sleep in the train and wake up in Joburg in the morning. So you can imagine, it is very far for us. So we are crying, we are thinking of your parents who are sleeping, you are joining them today. We want to thank the government and even thank the co-workers of Thabo for joining us together with the friends and relatives from far. We are so many. The Masebe family is a very big family. So we have come to say to our son, the big elephant, although we missed you a lot in real life. Okay, one issue. Mobala, Zamo Puja, Ushumile to Gale.
We now move with speed and call upon Mr. Thabo Masebe on behalf of siblings to come and pay tribute, and immediately after that we'll have a tribute by children, Chamano and Mitsepi. I'm told there is a musical item that will be offered by the team that is controlling everything here. Please feel free to do so in between. Oh, apologies. Thanks. I'm told I skipped the chief. We are still asked to speak, Musanda Chelapa. Apologies. Please come forward, Chief.
Program Director, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Mashao family. Now, if we were at home, you were going to pay a lot today with this question. Yes, that is why I started addressing him. But my apologies again. I'm going to speak in Chivenda so that even a former president, Mr. Mtlante, and the Premier, Mr. David Mafura, if you are going to miss what I'm going to say, you will miss a lot about the life of Thabo, because I grew up with him. You heard the aunt when she was speaking, she said, these people, they live for a couple of years at Mashao. At Mashao, that is the place where his mother is coming from. Now, this Mashao is a royal family. So I grew up with Thabo. Now, let me start talking about the family of Mashao. Thabo Masebe mduru wa Baranganani na Nyamadala Muteiwa na Mashao. Wo Baranganani wa Udrani na Magiriji. Alo Baranganani Muraji that is how my grandfather used to praise himself. When he says Chirayawaku, in other words, he was an advisor to the elderly. I think he was 20 years by then. Now, I don't think we are all Nyamatara or Paranana. Nibo Nabosa or Wochigilo. I don't Wochigilo never go in Svena or 1 year Thabo Masebe. You know, what do I mean? Nancy says, we want to wake up with ANC in Kanezibuya Kabo. I want to go in Mukarana to the Robert Koran. Baba Nakoni, Baba Bankara, Golos Kono, he was Russian, Golao. Now, all of us, it is a Zoba Mutanya, Wana, Marava, Divashan, Gola. Zino Thabo Masebe ngezo shambulia wengine makubwa wawe baba tikiwashama Mosi Thabo Masebe mtoko na baba tizori biza wali bana kwa tu yeye tu nani alipiwa na mwaka shambula wewe. He was referring to the Mashao County when he called us every day, and then we will not tell him about the boundaries of this Mashao village. Then he will tell us every day, when we post all, these people are going to take this land from you because you don't know it. For your information, Mr. Mutlavi and David Makura, at the place where we are staying, we are still suffering because of that. There is a piece of land, and there is also a fountain where we perform our rituals. But because of these people who were said in this obituary that they are some of the officials who are corrupt, we are unable to get to that place where we perform our rituals. So I'm also pleading with you, government officials, if you can help us to come to the Opo so that we can get that piece of land, which is very, very important to us. I can even share it here when I'm talking about this thing. That place is called Chabafama. Chabafama, that is the place where, when our people die, there are some of the people who are sent there. But because of these people who are corrupt, we are unable to go there. And my cousin Thabo, because he was not the person who boasts about himself and talk about things for himself, he never took trouble to go to the people and tell them that what we are doing to us is not good. Even today is gone. That is why I'm appealing to you, even to other government officials. If you are here, please help us. That is my plea. Zino kama ni yambo la Thabo Masebe musi ageni chozi. Ageni chozi na kwa injingama. Ezi kwa mtano visa. Ovisa kwa ama. Adowa arena zino. Ralana zituku ralana michero yo tekini ya wanageni takana. Na wawita Thabo Masebe. Zoro sitakazana manda musuwa wote bashora banga ndo umwe unenana asiku zambu wote wote wao bikona ngoro tu duwa chisuku kana chisuku wao diwa no fidele in simaje ikoni kusha wao unawo bikwa mwewe ni avanti na alina kishi kedeni rawo takana manda tutatizo umwe zoro sitakazana musuwa bashora banga shidangi ni amashao Rejishi na zote mnyama Zinotaro Oda kutuwa Wayangini Sigera Wajusika Sigera And Moses Watuwa Wayangini Very uyahamba yangeni amashawo achitidzura weekend dzimachuka chikoroni achitiziyanara utano zvino nenazatuka active kwezvepolitiki ndinapa limodhuka nenzvimbo yechikoroni iprofusiri muzvara urakona kugidima zvinhu ngamakuru avakonyamadara ndiri murango variatidhiri kupfuura mapurisa vakutonga mukuru kuri pamera mapurisa raunendenga mapurisa vapano vabotasi zvino muzvara vanorutongera vavo tanavantoa zvimishe madaro vakafarirora vatofana takoende hena goro ovanagojeri kono ndiapa ine natomodhi vakojiri avo vatopfuura kugidima kana pamwana vazvadisi vachikushava mapurisa tavo angotuwa vangeirivhera zvino aporadokakagara pamugadi amalume wavo Peter the late chikapara, may his soul rest in peace. Mostly avandigeita okona yeBelgium kana ndingayofinika I'm not sure. Zvino tawangodibva kanewspaper achibva kanewspaper hava makuru vavapeguru vachikuona chinepe chese kanewspaper vava vachiopa mamanda mapurisa vanamuzvara vanonazvo odhova uye nekuraisa mapurisa tavakuona chikipa zvotomwonawo zvezvila zvavosivahamiko ova picha yavo namachudheni mamwe hava vamukeguru vatojia chikipa chilani tavasi vachigoda bigeni vachiwana vajia chikipa chilani umurachisiya veve vajia vadzumba mambo varazvaroona chikipa vachiwa chilengavaya mapurisa mara yakazorototavo atiche mafungwa apolitiki oifuta vaangeni amashauri ripfaro vaisaranga manda ngautuwa muzvara washo ngori rova richikadimufuna ende hoyo muzvarai huna zvinji zveava achikadidoriitera vatu vashango la South Africa ngau angaredza zvino zvirovhura riangeni chewero ngadzi 10 dzaApril alandisakake 1993 vasvikazoroitia mini musi ngadzi 10 dzaApril rodzura kakonani yanga mumwe ndina Thabo rikopfa redhiyo nochiwo free vokrisani votunchiwa vorova Thabo ndiyapo yasumbedza kufuna ANC yawe navatu vayo nendodzura naye hapo Thabo ombodzitonamba ajiakidza awe ari muzvara ndidonibona zori oyagaitongozviva onamba otuwa ngantani uri ovagonya kuona uri vamwe makomredi vagai votsireredzeyana zvino zvino ndingatowamba ndizori vaANC avongo kandirime vahamashawo navahamaseve rongo ratewa rirote nashango lote la South Africa loratewa vakozvipfa zori Thabo ova mutu ene asinyagere ene mune zvitu ova achinyagera vatu hoyu mutu vasedza ming'waha yawei ndikarotoma zvapolitiki mari hauna vatu vevadhanga murau kuti vavone vakupupapupa vachinyaka kuona rakadzi TV uri vaiye panda vayoita zvezvine vaita zvone zvisi zvavudi mari akatagwa zvongoraro. So as a family, what I can tell you, the ANC people, we are proud of Thabo Masebe. We are very proud of him because he never appeared in the media for the wrong reasons. Ripfarichi takaranga mandangori hongo uya arishonisa richiyanga ningeka politiki heva achichira hone zvino riri ngauraro muya wanga waderenga muraro rikolipo.
Reliable Chief, and apologies once more. If you're an owner of black Volvo with registration number JF95YZGP, JF95YZGP, you are requested to go at the back there. Someone has forgotten something important in your car and they want to access that. As Ayla indicated, we'll move with speed now to the next phase. We'll take a tribute by sibling, Mr. Humalang Masebe, and then we'll be followed by a tribute by children immediately after that.
Morena Mswara Marapo. As they always say, and all protocols observed, let me thank you for this opportunity. One can never be ready for giving a speech at a time like this. I was praying the whole week that I will be able to do it. We are said we will hold your maintain your legacy. It is said after life you will be with your parents wherever you're going. I know they are going to welcome you with open hands. Chimelani Zwabudi, Magoba Gada. Baru gumalinga nini buye, pananga uchelamu, nda.
Greetings to everyone. My name is Thabo Masebe. I'm the oldest son of Thabo Masebe, and I'm here with my younger brother, Thabo Masebe. When I look at myself today, I can see that I'm almost the same height as my dad, if really not taller than him. There were a lot of things that we had in common, my dad and I. And that was the love for sports, gym, and probably the fact that my voice was much deeper than his most times. Just like my dad, I'm very shy. And I know that his communication skills were on par. And as I stand here today, I hope I won't fumble. There's a lot of life experiences and good memories I shared with my dad. The one outstanding moment was the wisdom he imparted. My dad was a very principled man. He taught me that integrity, respect, and love are very important virtues. And when it came to my dad's work, he was always open to discuss with me and Tshepi about what goes. He was always willing to discuss his work and what he does and who he is talking to about politics and issues surrounding this country or the world in general. And we would learn a lot from him. A few things that I also admired about my father were his dedication. He was also disciplined, calm, and very level-headed with everything that he did, especially with his work. He never switched up when it came to an interview, whenever he was asked very challenging questions or questions that would be very hard to answer according to majority of us here. He stayed true to what he would say. He stayed true to his facts. He never twisted his words, and he would always keep things real.
His love for old school music was also... His love for old school music was also the love language we shared. He taught my brother and I songs like Loving Arms by Darby Gray, Let's Get Together and Feel Alright by Bob Marley, and the likes of Lionel Richie, and he also loved Luther Vandross. While we were driving to golf or the gym, unlike my brother, I would sing with my dad. Dad, we just want to say thank you for being a great father, for giving us the love and support and all the great things you did for us. You send us to the best school, and as we stand here, we know that you are not forever gone, because everything that you were, your legacy still lives in me and Chami. We will be the great human beings that we are supposed to be because you taught us well. We will forever honor you as your sons and make you proud. We love you, Dad. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, boys. Thank you. That was Chamano and Mwitsepi. Thank you so much. Remain strong, boys. We'll move and call upon Me Florence Masebe to also pay tribute to Comrade Thabo Masebe. How's Florence?
Di Machironi, wo Premier Makura, na wo former President Motlanthe, the Minister na the MEC dzirone pano, na bangwe baranga phanda bote. Muta wa Masebe na wa Mashao. On any ordinary day, I'm a really good speaker, even if I say so myself. I am an artist, so it shouldn't be tough for me to find words. I had the misfortune and it's crazy that it's not the misfortune of being the one who had to call a lot of you and my siblings one by one on Monday, late afternoon, to tell them the sad news of the passing of the best brother God could ever craft. You see, if there was such a thing as Brother Olympics, Thabo Masebe would have gotten gold medals each time. This man brothered right. The most protective human being I ever had. The most supportive superhero I ever knew. From when I was just a little girl. And he didn't only do that for me. Each of my siblings would tell you, Thabo ba motho wa rufuno. He loved right and he loved hard. I've had quite a number of challenges at some point in my life. And each time I knew, whatever it is, if I called my brother, I would be fine. I was shot by unknown people who till this day have never been found in 1999. And as I was lying in a pool of blood in my own driveway, I remember saying, whatever you do, after you call the ambulance, call Thabo. And he showed up, and he made me believe that I can get better, and that whether they find those people or not, the important thing is for me to live. On many other occasions, Thabo would show up for me. I was in an interview recently, I think it was with Clement Manyatela on Radio 702. And I was being profiled, and we're talking about my work on the Republic. And they're taking calls. Guess who calls the radio station? Thabo Masebe. Because his sister is on the radio. Everything I did excited him to the last minute. And he called through and started telling anecdotes about how he would be at events, big events, and the late President Mandela would come through and say, Thabo, come over here. And that was his favorite story about me. And he'd say, yeah, so I would feel so proud that Mandela is calling me. And then when I get there, he says, how are you? Where's Florence? How is she doing? He didn't mind, though. He was my brother. He was my hero. He was my best friend. He's the kind of guy that would have killed the bull for me. On an occasion, or maybe two, he has dumped boyfriends for me when he did not deem them proper to be in my life. And there was no discussion afterwards. He dumped them. We were done. This man loved us. This man loved his children. Every other week, we would have the cookouts, and we would sit and just get together for no reason. Nothing parties, we called them. In the last few days, last few weeks, he had been looking for a nothing party. I need to quickly take you through what we went through in December. Thabo fell ill while he was at home and called an ambulance and went to a hospital. But he only managed to send Muitepi a message saying, I'm not well and I'm in hospital, I'm admitted. He couldn't send further messages after that because he later told us that the porter took away his phone. So we didn't know where to find Thabo. We had to go through quite some strides to find out which hospital he was being treated at. And when we got there, things were not good. We prayed and prayed. We prayed so much for an entire week running up to Christmas. We literally just asked for a Christmas miracle. And I think he felt sorry for us and gave us the Christmas miracle. The rest of the months since December 2022 were a bonus. They were an extra time. Thabo decided to come back because that time he could see we were not too prepared. He had hoped that this time we would be prepared. Maemue, we can never be prepared. But here we are. Ahuna jina rangaita, chashundu unionesa. And as my brother said, we will continue to love and support your boys, because that is what you would have expected us to do. The one is Rabu de Makovagada. The one is Rabu de Muduru of a farmer, the Batanga Rudo Shengonga, Nanje, Namanos and Namanato Horachet. The one is Rabu de Muduru of Baranganani. The one is Rabu de Inui Masebe Wanyere Chena Yakarira Yakabuya Nansikana. wagumana ingane ni buye phandanga ahutshena mumwe chiongwe.
Thank you so much, Comrade Florence. It's a difficult moment indeed to appreciate that. I'm told I must call upon the family choir, Auspobi. I'm told you are leading us with that item. We'll take the family choir, and immediately after that, I'll request Comrade Kumbozo Nchabeni to be ready. We'll take a tribute from Comrade Dibuo Peters, and you will render that item, Comrade Kumbozo. Thank you so much. Let's take the family choir.
Ishiri isi iyo ya upelo hashamo bochizwao bali pasi bachikubanganiwa udoitwa kubangano eleko kubangano kurukuru yabaketwa bamuzimu ichibiza ngetaduru ndido baonenda chizwa nga Yesu tikorashi kwemburi kona aribori wangaimano kametimiluta kubasa jaribona kariduniza.
The Premier of the province of Gauteng, Premier Makura, my colleague, Minister Mondli Gugubele, Minister in the Presidency, the MECs, mayors who are present, and fellow mourners. I'm going to read a tribute on behalf of Comrade Dipuo Peters, which is the message from one of those who were part of the generation of young lions that received a clarion call from President General O.R. Tambo to make South Africa ungovernable. And they responded, or we responded with a generational mission that says it's freedom in our lifetime. The message reads as follows, and I'll read from the first person. I would like to take this opportunity to convey our heartfelt condolences to the bereaved family of our late unsung hero and cadre, Comrade Thabo Masebe. Comrade Thabo will be remembered as one of the most outstanding comrades and selfless cadres of our movement, who at a very young age dedicated his life to the struggle to emancipate our people and our country from the yoke of colonial domination and apartheid subjugation. He was one of our comrades who had a combination of good qualities rarely found in one person. These rare qualities did not go unnoticed amongst his peers. That is why it is not a surprise that youth of our country bestowed confidence in him by trusting him with the responsibility of leading our youth structures at a time when it was not fashionable to take up leadership responsibilities because of the risks associated with such positions. He rose organically in the ranks of the youth movement on the basis of his unwavering commitment to the struggle for the total emancipation of our people, risking both limb and life. At each stage of his involvement, the confidence was bestowed on him. He did not invoke himself or exaggerate feeling of self-importance and arrogance. He respected the revolutionary tasks that confronted our country and did not regard himself as possessing monopoly of wisdom or having all the answers to the challenges that confront our country, our people, and our movement. He was respectful, humble, and served with great humility. He crossed paths with those who sought to entrench racial and class domination as a permanent feature that defines the daily reality of our people. His commitment to fundamentally alter the lives of our people, the working class and the poor, made him become an activist and freedom fighter at a very young age. His good deeds and compassion towards his people are some of the basic ingredients that must define the rebirth and renewal of our movement, the ANC. The renewal of our movement is a necessary and overarching task that must be undertaken if our movement is to regain the confidence of the masses of our people, especially the working class and the poor. In undertaking this important revolutionary task,
We must build a movement that is member-based but cadre-led. May his soul rest in peace. The spear has fallen. Edrani Swaboti. Maemu Muturu Abafamate.
Move to the next phase of our program. We'll take a video now, and immediately after that, we'll request the Young Lion generation, led by Comrade Malusi Kikaba, to come and wrap the coffin with the colors of the African National Congress and also represent that team by coming here to pay tribute. Let's take a video.
Thabo was everything to me. Thabo Masebe received me in Johannesburg. Thabo taught me how to drive a car. We stayed together most of the time. A week before Thabo departed, we would speak every day. Thabo was a young lion. Thabo was a struggle hero, more than a brother to all of us. We've lost a man, we've lost a son of the soil, we've lost a cadre, a true cadre of the ANC, who didn't go for anything than service to the people of South Africa. We'll miss you, Thabo, until we meet again, my brother.
My name is Joe Matebula. Thabo was a brother, a comrade, a friend, a very dependable ally. We spent most of our time together, traversing the whole of the then Northern Transvaal, within the villages, the townships. We built structures, and after the unveiling of the African National Congress, we used to build the Women's League, the civic movement.
Makubele from Limpopo. We were brought up under the leadership of Comrade Thabo Masebe, back then in the Northern Province. And I believe that Comrade Thabo is one of the finest products ever produced by the revolutionary movement of our time. And all we need now is to give him the dignified and decent send-off that he deserves. We believe that we shall have done him an honor for the contribution that he did give to this particular country and society at large. He's the son of the soil. We will carry on the struggle from where he has left.
I'm Kumbuzo Nchabeni. I was raised by Thabo Masebe, and he raised me from the age of 9 until I grew up that I am. He has always been caring. I was recalling an incident when we went to the Kwandebele conference and I left my medication at home. He had to drive back to Kwandebele before he opened the conference to go and get me medication because I didn't want any other doctor. He has always cared for me. In the last few months, from November last year, he has been very particular. He'll text me or talk to me at least once or twice a week and to encourage me and to say, I've raised a fighter, I've raised a strong woman. So for me, the support and him always been there. The last text to me was last week, which he said, great stuff, keep the momentum and don't let off because the country needs you, and that's what we're going to do. So that's the memory of him from me, and we keep in his spirit of service, we'll continue to serve our people.
My name is Dani Dorothy Mahlangu.
We are now under extreme time pressure. Presented that generation of young people that declared freedom or death, victory is certain. I'll request Comrade Malusi Kikaba and the team to please come forward and execute the task that has been assigned to you. Let's move with speed, comrades. We are under extreme time pressure. Thanks. Let's have that revolutionary song, comrades. That's it. We can do better, comrades. Thank you so much. That's better. Thank you so much, comrades. We'll take Comrade Mario Sikikawa, the former president of the African National Congress Youth League. And immediately after that, we're going to take Comrade Phoebe Potgieter, who will also represent the Young Lion generation. In that order, comrades, please.
Matla, Kyaruna, Matimba, Aina, Manda, Ashu. The former president, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, Premier of Gauteng, Comrade David Makura, and members of the family. Ministers, MECs, and the leadership of the Young Lions who shook the citadels of power in Pretoria and made the racists tremble in fear. Fate, as it were, has imposed upon our grief-stricken souls the responsibility to memorialize a beloved comrade and friend. Our words are not enough adequately to convey our heartfelt tribute to this gentle giant of our generation. As we undertake this noble responsibility, we cannot but be humbled by the fact that at one stage we came to know, be friends, and share the same trenches of the struggle with someone so remarkable. Today we assemble to perform a painful duty, given that Comrade Thabo was such a towering figure among us, whose life was an inspiration to many of us. At all levels, His leadership quality was visible for all to see. We met Thabo as young revolutionary activists, and during the course of time, we forged enduring friendships and bonds of affection. What drew us to him was not merely his friendliness, but above all else his intellectual prowess and total devotion to the struggle. Comrade Thabo was an intellectual and moral giant of our generation who stood firm by his convictions until his final days. He epitomized in himself gallantry in the face of vicious enemy onslaught, the sheer exuberance of youth, and the vision of our people for victory over white supremacy and colonial bondage. He epitomized the triumph of principle over convenience and collective action over individual pursuits. He reminded us through the force of his example that it was neither for glory nor distinction that we joined the struggle as young activists, committing all our energies and efforts to the fight to emancipate our people from the indignity of oppression and exploitation. It was only because of our yearning for freedom. Born during a very dark time during our country's history, he voluntarily joined the people's struggle to free themselves from bondage. He was prepared to suffer together with and for his people, making all the sacrifices required to ensure that freedom was achieved. He paid no regard to his personal comfort or whether the struggle could demand of him to make the ultimate sacrifice. He was a humble giant whose humility was not a symbol of cowardice on his part. He was humble among his people, but fearless in confronting racial arrogance. His humility was used to mobilize the masses and inspire them to commit heroic deeds in the struggle. He dedicated all his youth to the organization, mobilization, and education of the youth, believing in the need for them to always be willing to occupy the front trenches of the struggle. He understood the truth that no revolution can be victorious without this effective education, mobilization, and education of young people into political action. For ultimately, the youth are the catalysts of the future. Together, we dreamed of a society where our people would enjoy ownership of the land of their country and its produce, control the means of production and the fruit of those means, able to determine their own destiny. We believed that we had to destroy the political infrastructure as well as the social and economic relations of the system of white supremacy and remove from our social fabric the entire vestiges of white domination. These are the ideals Comrade Thabo leaves unaccomplished. He leaves behind a people who have achieved enormous social progress but are still very far from completing the mission to transform themselves into being finally the owners of the productive assets of their own land. He leaves behind a people recovering from the ravages of a devastating pandemic and other natural disasters in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern and Western Capes. He leaves behind a people still reeling from high unemployment and an economy that is not growing well enough, which still remains exclusive, skewed overwhelmingly in favor of a racial minority. He also leaves behind a movement grappling with the challenges of its renewal in the face of complex existential realities of close to 3 decades of freedom, determined that it should accomplish all these challenges without imploding. It is vital that this agenda of renewal and unity must be set by and bear the imprint of the social motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution. It must be for the sole purpose of advancing the historic mission of these motive forces of total emancipation along the path of the most maximum unity. In his name, we will continue to work hard for the genuine unity and cohesion of the ANC, which is the cornerstone for the unity and cohesion of the motive forces of the NDR and ultimately our country. We are indebted to him for all that he has done for us. We count him boldly and proudly among the chief architects of our freedom. We wish his family comfort during this difficult time and trust that time shall heal their wounds. We shall miss him dearly. Thank you.
Amandla, Program Director, the Masebe family, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, Premier Makura, and officials and members of government, Premier of Limpopo, Comrade Stan Matabate, ministers, leaders of the Youth League from different generations, representative of other political parties, current and former youth leaguers, fellow mourners, and colleagues, all protocols observed. We are gathered here this morning to lay to rest and celebrate the life of one of the finest amongst us. And it's a particular privilege to do so with his families, colleagues, comrades, and friends. We thank the Masebe family for giving us their son and father, and know that your loss is our loss and your pain is our pain. Over the last few days, tributes and remembrances, many attributes that characterize Thabo Masebe have been highlighted. His humility, his adherence to principle, his work ethic, his being approachable, attention to detail, well-read, the list goes on. What emerges is a picture of the Thabo we know, well-rounded, respected, and loved. Since I will be speaking on behalf of the generational cohort which Thabo was part of, let us explain why Masebe represents the best of that generation. It was a generation which earned the accolade of young lions of the struggle from no less a giant than Oliver Reginald Tambo, when they made reality the call to render apartheid unworkable and made it their generational mission. A young Masebe from the dusty streets of the northern province became conscientized to hate the oppression and exploitation that was at the foundations of the system of apartheid. Like many others from his generation, he came to realize that the abhorrence of the system is not enough. That to end it, he had to become part of a movement that mobilized and organized to be that change. Thus, he became an activist in the youth, student, and civic movements, working to mobilize traditional leaders, teachers, civics, women, workers, and a host of other sectors. When repression sought to remove the leaders of the youth and student movement during the formative years of the South African Youth Congress cycle, Thabo and others, as we heard from Comrade Jerin Dour later this week or earlier this week, were ready to step in and pick up the spear. This generation of young lions in the crucible of struggle learned a number of lessons. We knew as a generation that we stood on the shoulders of those who went before us and that we were part of a long and illustrious tradition of struggle. We were taught to know and explore our history, to understand and learn from the past, its ebbs and flows, better to inform our paths towards the future. Masebe, as we said before, was well-raised, always willing to learn and engage, with an insatiable curiosity and a wide range of interest. Yet another lesson was understanding of contemporary issues, the world we live in, emerging and new trends, and most importantly, the real-life challenges and experiences of the people, the youth and students, workers and women. Thabo, throughout his life, lived this lesson. It was a lesson which Peter Mokaba, who those days were responsible for political education, drummed into all of us, asking the question repeatedly, what is the role of the youth? And we responded, the youth must learn. This commitment to continuous learning stood Thabo in good stead throughout his life, which made him always to strive for excellence in whatever endeavor he undertook. At various points to understand and contribute to the strategic approach to negotiations, as he represented the views of the Youth League in the ANC's negotiating team, as well as in the Constitutional Committee. Masebe also sharpened his knowledge of matters of youth development in the forums of the National Youth Development Forum, the NECC, focusing and highlights the challenges of youth unemployment and education that were already so prevalent in the 80s and the early 90s. He was in the forefront of arguing that ours was not a lost generation, that we chose the struggle and therefore contributing to the first generation of national youth policy in South Africa, which saw the emergence of the National Youth Commission and eventually the Umsobombo Youth Fund. As Treasurer General of the ANC Youth League, he made it his job to not only understand about raising and managing resources for the immediate programs of the Youth League, but also the need to invest in the future sustainability of the League. Treasurers of the Youth League like Bachana Mokoena, Ignatius Jacobs, Fawcett Motibe, Thabo Masebe, Pemi Majodine, and Nikiwe Num understand that organizational resources were there to invest in the development of young men and women that they led. Indeed, when we called ourselves a preparatory school of activists of the ANC, it was no empty slogan. It meant investing in political education programs to sharpen our political and ideological skills, in the training of communicators on understanding the media, how to write and produce media, and the importance of agitation and the battle of ideas. It meant mobilizing resources for our gender committees to meet, so that we learn about women's struggle at home and in other countries, training generations of young women, led by the Poor Peters, the likes of Comrade Pemi Majodina and many others, Comrade Faith Mazibuko, Comrade Kumbutso Nchaveni, and others. It taught us it trained generations of young women to take their rightful place in the youth and women's movement, and knew the importance of fighting for a non-sexist society as we determined our vision of the South Africa we want. And then, of course, to invest in the administration skills of our organization, to teach our branch secretaries, our regional secretaries how to write reports, organizational analysis and strategies, implementation, as well as political management. There is a very rich archival treasure trove of such materials, papers, and media of the ANC Youth League from this era that still need to be studied to write the true history of our time. The investment in political education and training was further characterized by the fine balance between theory and practice, between militancy and discipline. Thus, our communicators such as Edima Bitsela, Pax Mankashlana, Annette Griesel, Net Kekana, Thabo Masebe, Nomfanelo Kota, did not only learn about communications in theory, but put it in practice when they founded Horizon and wrote and produced the various media products that explained our programs and positions. This fine balance of theory and practice also saw Masebe and others, when given the task, as we heard earlier, to immortalize the contribution of the 76th generation, made sure that they left the lasting legacy of the Hector Peterson Memorial that we have in Soweto today. Indeed, for the generation of Masebe, no job was too small or too big, too humble or seemingly insignificant to give it their all. Serving for them on the National Working Committee of the ANC Youth League over so many years was exactly that, a committee of work and of implementation. The ANC Youth Leagues of Thabo's generation's presence was felt in every single committee of the ANC and the mass democratic movement. It allowed our generation to learn from the immense skill and knowledge in our movement and to sharpen our own advocacy on behalf of young people in this forum. In the process, we learned the value of shunning short-term popular solutions to complex problems and the importance of identifying and seizing important moments to achieve progress and move our struggle towards a higher level. It was a generation that were not scared to break new ground, to venture into uncharted territories because of the culture of rigorous debate in the Youth League. We all thought that the late Comrade Derek Masuk was a bit crazy when he proposed to convene, and this was early 1991-92, a conference of the then dreaded South African police in Soweto before 1994. But out of this initiative emerged the concept of community policing, still a cornerstone of our approach to safety and security today. Or even earlier when Masebe and others argued that it's time for us to sit down with the IFP Youth Brigade in order to ensure ending the violence and lasting peace in KZN and Gauteng. This generation of young lions were not only patriots who fought for their country. At various points, they, including Masebe, were sent to represent South African youth at international events. They did so with distinction by immersing themselves in the process of understanding the situation of other struggling people, the balance of global forces, our position on non-alignment, unity of the South, Pan-Africanism, building lasting comradeship and friendship. These characteristics of the generation of young lions are encapsulated in the motto of the Youth League of fight, produce, and learn. To fight against apartheid and now against the evils of inequality, poverty, and greed. To produce new generations of activists and agents for change. To produce intellectuals, administrators, scientists, innovators, entrepreneurs, public servants, and representatives. And of course, to learn by doing, to learn from others, to learn through self-improvement, through listening, reading, and through engagement. Program Director, fellow mourners, with the advent of democracy in 1994, this well-rounded knowledge and experience gained by this generation found expression in their contributions in many different spheres. They understood that the terrain of struggle had fundamentally changed and that the work of building a national democratic society that is democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous had just begun. Thus, we saw this generation of student and youth activists taking on responsibilities in many, many different spheres of our society, as professionals in the public service, in hospitals, schools, home affairs offices, agencies, as communicators and ambassadors, as public representatives and entrepreneurs, as cultural activists in the security establishment, in the media, in policy think tanks, in the trade union movement, in the sports movement, and in the ANC and its leagues. Thabo Masebe was amongst those serving as spokesperson and senior public servant in provincial and national government levels. They understood their roles as agents of change to implement and advocate for policies in whatever sphere they found themselves that were people-centered, people-driven, gender-sensitive, and for the advancement of a better life for all. Over the last 2 decades, many of them experienced and bemoaned the impact that the sins of incumbency and factionalism had on our movement, and were often marginalized because they refused to become part of slave politics that have become so endemic. At this point, we agree all with Thabo that the progressive and transformation project in South Africa is in serious trouble. That the advances in the deracialization and expanding of public service, of building and maintaining social and economic infrastructure, providing access to basic services to millions, towards women's emancipation in a non-sexist society, towards greater social cohesion, non-racialism, and a sense of common destiny are under serious threat. Key to this is the state of health of our movement, who for the last 110 years have been an integral part of the body politic and fabric of South Africa, the African continent, and of progressive humanity. These are matters that Masebe felt passionate about and would engage with all of us about what needs to be done. Thabo was the first to agree that there are no easy answers, no quick fixes or silver bullets. He agreed that we needed to honestly assess the 20 years of freedom, what we did right, and the mistakes that were committed. He firmly believed that the ideal of a national democratic society, a South Africa that truly belongs to all its people, is a beacon of hope, was not only worth dreaming about, but was worth sacrificing for. Thus, till the very end, he worked and sacrificed for this ideal diligently, meticulously, and consistent. Thabo knew from his experience as a youth and student activist that being an agent for change mattered, but even more important, to be part of a movement for change is what mattered and that what needs to be built. And as we today lay to rest our dear brother, father, uncle, colleague, and comrade, his death should echo as a clarion call. We often talk about a generational mission as if this is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence that you have when you're young. And indeed, each generation of young people must define its mission to either achieve or betray. But Thabo believed, and he was an example, that there's a need for an intergenerational mission to regenerate the ANC, to regenerate its ideology, its revolutionary morality, as well as its state of organization. And when we talk about regenerate, we talk about the regeneration in the language of Pixley Kaseme's famous speak of 1906, a regeneration that contributes ideas for the future and translate it into program and movement, as he called for the South African National Native Conference, and a regeneration which the generations of Lembede, Sisulu, and Tambo, the 1976 generation, and indeed the Young Lions generation, have been able to call forward. This intergenerational mission to regenerate today is so much needed to ensure that South Africa's project of social transformation, envisaged in the Freedom Charter and our democratic constitution, is wrenched back to track. As we therefore honor the memory of Thabo Masebe and the many others who went before him, let us pick up his spear and let the example he set be multiplied. Hamba Kashle Comrade Thabo Masebe, icon of the Young Lions. Amandla.
Just hold it there. You'll play it immediately after I've called upon a representative of the African National Congress, the former president of the Republic of South Africa, and former deputy president of the African National Congress, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, to come and pay tribute to Comrade Thabo.
Salute,
The Masebe family, Premier of Gauteng, Comrade David Makura, Program Director, Panyaza Lisufi, ministers here present, MECs, councillors, and other leadership of the Alliance. Our spiritual leaders, Reverend Frank Chikani, our traditional leaders, Hosi Mashau, fellow mourners. It was with great sadness and shock that my wife, Gugu, and I learned about the sudden passing of Comrade Thabo Masebe, with whom we both have had the privilege of working with so closely over the years in various capacities. To his family, we would like to express immense gratitude for sharing Comrade Thabo Masebe with extended family, the African National Congress. Even though we may not fully grasp the gravity of your deep sorrow and loss, we hope that you find solace and comfort in the knowledge that we are here to condole with you. Your loss is our loss. All the tributes since his passing have been a positive reflection, underpinned by profound affection for the memory of Comrade Thabo. I've been asked to add our voice in paying tribute to this distinguished cadre of our organization. As Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. said, and I quote, "When we were young, our hearts were filled with fire. And as life is action and passion, a man must share in the actions and passions of his time at the risk of being judged not to have lived at all," close quote. Like many of his comrades and like all of us, Comrade Thabo is at once a product and a creator of history. Comrade Thabo, though self-effacing, his heart was filled with fire and shared in the actions and passions of his time. He distinguished himself in the role that he played, first as a student and a youth activist in the turbulent 1980s and early 1990s. Comrade Thabo and his generation of youth activists were privileged to have waged relentless struggles against apartheid. In the history of the ANC, we draw lessons from the 1930s, when the ANC was moribund and went through a process of renewal from 1937, which led to the establishment of the ANC Youth League and the ANC Women's League in the 1940s. So the first generation of ANC Youth League leaders were critical of the mother body, however resolved to join the leadership and to radicalize the organization. And so at the 35th National Elective Conference in 1949, they were elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Oliver Tambo, who was at the time 32 years old,
Walter Sisulu, who was as old as the ANC itself at the age of 37, was elected Secretary General. And Dan Klume, who was only 30, was also elected onto the National Executive Committee. At that time, Nelson Mandela was president of the ANC in the Transvaal. This generation of youth leaders, once they were elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC, they benefited from the stalwarts who served together with them, such as J.B. Marks, Moses Kotane, Edwin Thabo Masebe, to name but a few. Thereafter, they remained in harness and at the helm of the struggle until the organization was unbanned in 1990. Similarly, the generation of Comrade Thabo Masebe, the generation of the Young Lions, were privileged to have been in leadership positions of the youth structures when the 1944 youth leaguers were now the stalwarts of the organization. And so, at the time of the revival of the ANC Youth League, Oliver Tambo addressed the conference of this generation. These stalwarts of the 1940s were proud of the Young Lions and saw in the Young Lions a continuation of their own fire and passions, and therefore a sense of mutual respect developed. This alone may be said. The generation of Comrade Thabo Masebe learned from the best and were mentored by the best, and they learned at the knees of the 1944 youth leaguers. This is the historical context that shaped Comrade Thabo Masebe. Comrade Thabo Masebe possessed many qualities that cannot be quickly catalogued, but it was hard not to notice that he was warm-hearted and driven, fueled by his innate sense of empathy, love, and dedication for his people. Along with his concern for his fellow comrades and his belief in justice, these attributes defined much of his conduct and his favor for activism, drawing him to the ranks of the liberation movement, affirming his lifelong commitment to the fight against oppression and the ongoing quest to deliver freedom in all its realms to our country. Comrade Thabo, incorruptible in thoughts and deeds, believed with every fiber of his being that the ANC represented the people's greatest hope. Unassuming in his demeanor and consideration for others, Comrade Thabo was appreciated by all for his intellect, hard work, uprightness. He was a straight shooter. He radiated warmth and confidence. These qualities, together with his politeness and the patience to listen to other people, perhaps contributed the most in making him one of the most accomplished political communicators in the democratic era. He worked for both the party and the state in that capacity at the highest level. Comrade Thabo was highly effective in the various roles he occupied, earning him wide praise for his professionalism. Comrade Thabo leaves us at the time when his political home, the African National Congress, and our country are facing unprecedented difficulties, as well as the stubborn issues of poverty, unemployment, land hunger, food insecurity, energy insecurity, crime and corruption, to name a few. We, as his extended family, acknowledge that overcoming these difficulties and achieving the renewal of the organization requires unity of purpose, honesty, integrity, humility, and collective responsibility. Because conceit and complacency are the arch enemies of unity. Our history teaches us that renewal is inseparable from the role of the youth in the organization. As we remember Comrade Thabo and all those young lions that have left us, we can feel their rumble and hear their echo. Through these reverberations, we celebrate our young people today and their dynamic power to innovate and inspire. And we invite them to step back in time with us as we revisit a past scarred by terrible events, but also a past laden with lessons. There are no limits to what young people can achieve and do as we learn from history today. We encourage the youth to connect with that which came before, and we embolden them to roar across the landscape of this great continent to lead us from the front. The best way to train young people is to give them responsibility. Failure to do that is nothing but an excuse. That is the least we can do to honor the memory of Comrade Thabo Masebe. Comrade Thabo Masebe was very special because he understood that muulwani ukanda mufa achuwona. Once again, we pour out our sympathies and compassion for the family, friends, and colleagues of Comrade Thabo Masebe. May his memory live in the hearts of future generations. Long live the undying spirit of Comrade Thabo Masebe. Long live! Long live! And I thank you for your attention.
President of the African National Congress, Comrade Thabo Masebe. Comrades, we also want to acknowledge the presence of various political parties that are here to support us. The IFP, the EFF, ACDP, and other alliance structures that are here. We so wish we had time to also allow these formations to speak so that they can also represent their views about Comrade Thabo Masebe. But unfortunately, we are chasing time, but we acknowledge your presence. We also want to acknowledge the presence of the Premier of Limpopo, Ntate Chukuma Tabata, and the entire leadership that is here as well from government. We truly, truly appreciate your presence. We want to move with speed, and apologies to the family that we are now really chasing time. So I'll call upon Comrade Malusi Kikaba, representing that young lion generation, to come and remove the flag of the African National Congress and hand it over to Comrade Deputy Provincial Secretary of the ANC in Gauteng, Comrade Nomantu Nkomora Lehoko, who will hand it over to the children of Comrade Thabo so that we can close this part of our program and then call on Maduva to render a musical item that will introduce Reverend Frank Chikane, who will deliver a sermon. Immediately after Reverend Frank Chikane, we'll then enter the part 4 of our program, which is the official service, and I'll hand over everything to the leadership of the SAPS.
try our best to save the time. I've already done the greetings and recognitions. I must, though, repeat our condolences to the family again. Former President, I can't not recognize you again, Lemme, the Premier of Gauteng, Limpopo, Rea Leboha, and all the dignitaries, officials who are here. If Nekiliko High, I would do it the way we do it at home. And now because I'm in this place, I will not do it that way. I would like to share with you the word that came out of my interaction with the history Thabo Masebe. I asked myself the question, what can I say in this send-off service of a gallant soldier of the struggle, a cadre of the movement who represents the best of the generation? You heard them talking about it, the best of that generation, which O.R. Tambo called the young lions of our struggle. The young lion who was part of the generation that defined its mission clearly and was not confused. And I worked with that generation during those days. The generation that was determined that apartheid will not continue. It must end. A generation which helped us, those of us who were part of the formation of the United Democratic Front, having heard what O.R. Tambo said, I'm sorry to say it in the presence of the police here, so I don't get arrested. We denied that we listened to O.R. Tambo to set up the United Democratic Front in our treason trial. But this generation helped to make the country ungovernable. It actually made it totally ungovernable and created a lot of problems for us at that time because it was difficult to survive the Peter Marisbeck treason trial, even when we tried to defend ourselves, but we had broken so many laws of the apartheid system. We survived, but Delmas did not survive. They ended in prison. The one who, according to the poem in our program, was always on the march, on the straight and narrow, to serve, to suffer, to sacrifice, even when the dark, saturated cloud hang inches above his head. I will not talk about my encounters with him, because time does not allow us. In student politics, in youth Congress formations, in the United Democratic Front, I worked with him closely when the President Kgalema Motlanthe became president then, came with him, and we worked closely with him. In the last few days, I spent more time reading every article that was written about him, and mainly from the generation he comes from. During my reading, I also noticed that his generation recalled his history and life as an epitome of what a cadre of the movement is and should be. That's what they say. The tragedy, though, is that
he left us, and I quote from the obituary, concerned and sad about the state of his organization. The organization that he grew up in and became his family until his last breath on earth. He said to have openly spoken about the divisions within his organization. I'm not talking about the organization today. Having reflected on his life, the Lord put 2 verses of the scriptures in my mind. That's John 5:29 and 35. Verses 29 reads, "Those who have done good will rise to live, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned." I will not talk about the second part because it's difficult. I don't want to condemn people. But the important thing is that those who have done good will rise to live. If you don't believe in life after death, his life and history and practice, his exemplary life lives amongst us. Verses 35 says, John was, and where we say John, I will put Thabo Masebe. John was a lamp that burned and gave light. In other versions it says he was like a burning, blazing, and shining lamp. That's Thabo, as I read him and lived with him and experienced him. And we have enjoyed, I witnessed this week, that we enjoyed actually, we chose for a time to enjoy his light. All the writings about him, it's about his light. He's a lamp that was burning. It kept burning until the last moment. And we spent time this week to enjoy it. In other versions it says, you were excited for a time. And the time, it's just for a time. And that's what I want to speak about. And I sit down, just for a time. A while or an hour, I will add for a week for you. In this case, you enjoyed his light. I would like to say to you that today, that the scriptures have described this experience as a witness to the people. Masebe was a witness amongst us. Spoke amongst us, brings light amongst us, make us enjoy talking about it. But you know, it says just for a while. And I would like, before I sit down, to say, I hope, program director, that this is not just for a while. Because we do this in every funeral. We appreciate and revere the lives of people who have come up before us. And then when we leave, after speaking about how this light has shone amongst us, was shining and burning, we go and do exactly the opposite of what he was. That's the message. If I had a message today, is to say to you, we cannot afford to sit in these funerals, appreciate what people have done, you know, extraordinary people. And then having enjoyed it for a while, this text says, just for a while, I would like to urge you, I'm looking for a better word, urge you that we should not enjoy it just for a while. It must be our way of life. We need to move into the future. We need to move into the future and say, we can appreciate the Matambos, we can appreciate the Mandelas, talk about them, but then when we leave, we go and do something just the opposite of what we talked about. And so, Masebe has spoken to us. We have enjoyed a moment with him. In Daniel 12:3, and I end, those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever. Let us lead our people to the correct path which will make the promises of liberation a reality. Let us shine like the stars and bring hope to the people of South Africa, especially the poor and the marginalized. My dear comrade Thabo Masebe, you're not hearing me now, but your witness has spoken to us. Let your life keep on shining amongst us and give us no peace until we have corrected our ways and lead our people righteously and fulfill the commitment of a better life for all. This is my prayer. And so, God, we pray that you help us against ourselves, that we don't enjoy this moment just for a while, but that it becomes our way of life. And that Masebe's life, which we have talked about, must be at the back of our minds all the time. Remind us when we go astray and when we do the opposite of what he stood for. God, when everything fails, we know you are there for us. And I ask you, for the sake of the people of this country and for the sake of the poor and the marginalized, I pray that you help us to do that which this revolutionary generation stood for. In your name, amen.
Re a leboga moruti, re a leboga, le re ba ra di leboga. As we move to part 4, I want to sincerely apologize to the Masebe family. Re shitile kudisha, re shitile lo kudisha nako. Re gopela tshwarelo, re tshepa re tla re kushisha. I want to apologize also to those that were scheduled to speak. Because of time pressures, we could not call them to come here. Also apologize to the family of the premier. So when we're introducing the premier, we did introduce Memakura, Tswarelo Marina. We also want to apologize to the leadership of the church. I know we pressurized you, Muruti, but at least you managed to give us the sermon so beautifully. I've got few announcements to make. We advise that not all of us must go to the graveside. And those that have been identified to go to the graveside, I'm told there is transport that has been allocated to you to utilize that transport. And immediately after the grave service, we are requesting all of you to come back here. Lunch will be served here. I'm also advised that we must leave this place as neat as possible. Those that are in our province, they understand which political parties in charge of this place. We don't want to be accused otherwise when we leave this place. So I'm requested to notify you, please take the bottles, everything that we've utilized, throw it in the bin for peace sake. I want to thank you for your cooperation, your understanding. And once more to Masebe family, Tiang Moyeng Realebourg, Kumujera Utlaluk. To Comrade Thabo Masebe, go well, big brother. Go well, our loving DG. Go well, Kosi for life. Hopefully that Kosi will do something beautiful for you over the weekend. I now officially hand over everything. And I want to thank the police for that. I'm now handing everything to Reverend Mashiane on behalf of the South African Police Service to take over Part 4, Realebourg. Mordrilem Posho, Roswarelem Banabeshu, Posho Sipila Magatish, Swarel. Thank you.
I'm now going to request, between that, I'm going to request the band just to play a soft music so that when they're done, then we can proceed with our things. Republic of South Africa, President Thabo Masebe, the Premier of Gauteng, Mr. David Makhura, allow me to call upon the Premier of Gauteng to come forward and pay the tribute on behalf of the government of the Republic of South Africa.
Thank you, Reverend Mashiani, the chaplain of the South African Police Service. Motsamaishi wa moshomo o diragetseng MEC Panyaza Lesufi, Muruti Reverend Chikane, and members of the clergy, ntumeleng ke fetishe tlhompho go ba lelapa la Masebe, go meloko le metswalle re re paletše ke o diša dikgomo tša kgoši, dikgomo tša mošate. Ke fetiše tlhompho go Nsanda Chirapara Bafamadi Nda, former President Dr. Kgalema Motlanthe and Sis Gugu Motlanthe, our national ministers and deputy ministers present, the Premier of Limpopo, Premier Matabate, the MECs, the mayors, members of parliament and our legislatures and our councillors here present, the leadership of the ANC, the alliance and different political parties, the representatives of the Young Lions and the leadership of the ANC Youth League and the former leadership of the ANC Youth League, senior government leaders, DGs who are here, heads of departments, members of the media attending here today in honor of our DG, Thabo Masebe. Since Monday evening, the 18th of April, there's been an outpouring of condolences, tributes, and many testimonies about the phenomenal and fulfilling life of Thabo Masebe. We are gathered here, convened today by the family. We are here to say our acting DG and chief public servant, the master communicator and the editor-in-chief is no more. It is indeed an honor to speak on behalf of government about this special type of public servant, a true Mandarin who distinguished himself in the service of his nation and its young democracy. Thabo Masebe's presence enriched and improved government's work. It enhanced the quality of governance and service delivery. But his sudden and unexpected departure leaves us grief-stricken, and many have said this. We are heartbroken. He leaves a big gap in government and in the ANC for the work that still needs to be done. Because we need good people in government. We need good people in the ANC. We need people with integrity and skills. We need people with commitment. We have been saying as a manner of speaking to the family that we share this pain with you. But if truth be told, it is more difficult for you. Because to you, good Thabo was both a pillar of strength to the elders in the family, but a great inspiration to the young ones, to younger generations in the family. But we also know that to his children, to Chami and Mutsepi, it is more difficult for you. You have been very brave this week, and you are very brave today to pay tribute to your dad. Thabo was a pivot around which family festivities and activities revolved. His siblings said so today. Bamsanda Buchirapara said something about Thabo Yahulu Ndokulu. And he said, that great elephant has fallen. I would like to borrow from our mother, great struggle veteran, and now our ancestor, Maya Angelou, when she wrote a poem about when great trees fall, and the poem goes, when great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. The lions hunker in tall grass, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in the forests, small things recoil into silence, and their senses eroded beyond fear. And when great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, and sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with hurtful clarity. We have seen friends, comrades, members of the family's eyes this whole week swelling with hurtful clarity, unending tears. That is when great souls die and when great trees fall. Bamsanda, I want to say, even as Maya Angelou says, even the elephants hunker for clarity and the lions run when great trees fall. So Thabo Masebe was a great tree. Ambassador Jerindo earlier in the week paying tribute to Thabo made reference to the baobab tree. And indeed, that is the great tree. So our nation today mourns the fall of this great tree and the death of a great soul. As we do so, let us keep the entire family in our thoughts and in our prayers, so that in time they too can find peace and heal. But what is it about Thabo's greatness that we must discover? In the entire week and earlier today, we were indeed hearing stories about Thabo's greatness and the many dimensions of that greatness. And Thabo's greatness was not in the noise of his voice or his pomposity or big-headedness. All that he did not have. But it was in his quietness and comfort with working in the background to ensure that things get done. And sometimes to ensure that others take credit for those things that get done. And many a times, people who are appearing on platforms like today would say the things that Thabo wanted said without saying it is by him. And I'm one of those. There are many a times that Thabo got me to say things as if those are my things. And he never took credit. As Rams Mabote said on Thursday in this same hall during the ANC memorial service, Thabo's greatness was his humility and his humanity. That's a deadly combination. His humility and his humanity. And may I add that there was more combined with that humanity and humility that I'll talk about today. So we are today here to express our gratitude to the family and to Thabo's boys. To this family, to the Masebe family, Rerehuba Famadi. We thank you for giving birth and for nurturing, for planting, for nurturing, and for growing this great tree. We hope its incredible and indelible legacy of tireless involvement in the struggle to better the lives of others and in pursuit of our nation's democratic, transformative, and emancipatory agenda, the family will find solace when you hear the stories you have heard in the entire week. We hope that will help the family to find peace. But we know healing is also a journey. We who encountered Thabo know that he brought really the best traditions of the liberation struggle into his government work. And I really mean the best traditions of the liberation struggle in the sense that Reverend Chikane was talking about, in the sense that President Ntlante was talking about, in the sense that the Young Lions and the leadership of the Youth League was talking about. He also brought the best from the traditions of the liberation movement in his relationship with the media. He was no threat to the media. He did not see the media as an enemy. He was always truthful, always humble, hardworking, ethical to the core. And Thabo was bloody competent, but slow. Anyone who has worked with Thabo, I don't know what your experience is, boys. He took time. And sometimes we have many people in government and in the ANC who think doing things fast necessarily mean delivering results. Now I know this thing called big and fast results from, is it Malaysia? But Thabo was bloody slow. You give him anything, you know when it is done, it shall be perfect. But you must have patience. That's Thabo. He placed the interests of the people above everything else. And this is what made the ANC great. Now, I might sound like Donald Trump, but this is really, so truthfulness, humility, hard work, integrity, ethics, and assigning people tasks based on their competence and preparation. And above all, putting the people, the interests of the people above everything else. That's one thing you would never be wrong about Thabo. So it may take time. So you're working on a speech. It may bring it 2 days later. Very close to delivery. But one thing for sure, you know that there's no hidden agenda in Thabo. There was no malice. So Thabo's greatness also lied in understanding why the media is so critical in a democracy and why government communication is so important that the government can't blame the media for bad publicity. The government must be organized, Madiba, to tell its own story. But Thabo also understood that it serves a democracy for government and the media to have a sound relationship so that we can have an informed citizenry and an active citizenry, and government can be held accountable. Thabo understood that. That was his partnership with the media. But Masebe's greatness also lied in his deep understanding of ANC policy and his ability to explain things in very simple terms. His greatness was also his intellectual stamina to debate everything for long hours. If you didn't have time, don't start a debate with Thabo. For long hours. The guys in the media know to explain things slowly and take time and engage with everything, including those deadly opposed to his views. But his greatness also lied in maintaining a very healthy relationship. If you disagree today, or you have had a very heated, in the nature of politics, a very heated argument and discussion with Thabo. Tomorrow is tomorrow. It is done. He bared no grudges. In his standard approach, he eschewed empty phrase mongering and slogans. So he will, if you throw something that does not make sense, he will say, so, okay, so what does that mean, Premier? How are we going to explain what you are saying? So first explain it to me, because I must go and explain it. He eschewed rhetoric, just throwing stuff there without thinking about what it really means. He was slow. And his greatness lied in his simplicity and clarity of thought, particularly in public discourse and in political communication. So in typical Masebe's style, if you can't explain it to a young child, you don't know what you are talking about. He set a gold standard for many young government communicators, that you must always be truthful and factual. You must be transparent and proactive, especially when you work with the media. So he believed in what the Chinese say, that you must always seek truth from the facts. And Thabo demonstrated impeccable integrity, particularly in a world characterized by so-called alternative truths. There was only one truth for Thabo. If you have messed up, you have messed up. And you must own up. He is not going to do the work of spinning and explaining the inexplicable. So if you can't pronounce it with Thabo, why should he pronounce it? And why do you write it if you can't? If you have the numbers that are too long there, why don't you write them in words? So don't write 1 million there which you can't read. You must write it 1 million. But Thabo was also a man of structure, process, and method. He was very structured. I don't know what the experience is as the family. He didn't just do things spontaneously. He was very structured, and he was very organized and consistent in asking the same questions. Every time we had to write a speech or write a statement or write a policy document, there were 5 questions that Thabo will ask. You know, when you prepare the first draft that's going to be edited, there are many, there are speech writers here and communicators. The first draft, so Thabo is going to ask always these questions. What are you trying to communicate and who are you communicating to? So what are the key messages? The communicators will say. So if you're not clear what the key messages are, don't even start. When the key messages are clear, you can now discuss the speech and you have to debate the key messages. Is that really what you want to say? And then you would say, so what is the theme? But are all these things that are in here truthful and factual? Can they be verified? Are there also people other than you who can confirm that these things you are saying are true? They are not only in your head. And perhaps most importantly, does this message deal with the fundamental issues of concern to the people? Because communication must always be about the people, and policy must always be about the people. That's the 4th thing he would ask. And lastly, how are we going to enlist other stakeholders? Thabo was a bloody good stakeholder manager. And many were managed without knowing that they are being managed. How are we going to mobilize others around this? So when you have answered what are the key messages, what is the theme, when you have answered all those, is this factual and truthful, does this address the fundamental issues, you must look for the stakeholders. So who else should we mobilize? He was a very good organizer. Who else should we enlist to this? Before you even speak, before you even issue a statement, who else should be mobilized? So Thabo's greatness was in his discipline and his method, in dealing with government communication and dealing with government administration and policy. But the man was slow, as I said. And you have to just come to accept. So DG, when can we get that? And I must report to Thabo, before Easter, he said to me, Premier, I'll give this to you after Easter. And when he passed on, he was working on something that he wanted to give to me after Easter. And it has to do with the appointment, the process of the appointment of a head of Department of Health. And I must say, Thabo, we got that work, all that work done. So even as he was sitting, as Florence called me at home, as he was sitting on his chair, peacefully, but his work was done. The file was ready, and that HOD of Health was appointed this week during the period of mourning. And he had said to me, I'll bring you this file, Premier, immediately after Easter, and it was done. So, we are very grateful to the Masebe family. But there's something about Thabo and communication. He was a professorial enigma to young communicators. He is a professorial, and I mean, but by this I mean, everything he said to these young communicators in government, they did, and it worked for them. And the government communicators in our province loved DG Masebe, and they respected him enormously. The media has already spoken for itself. They had a very good and sound relationship with him. But Masebe was not just a communicator. He was a true Mandarin. And somebody who made a great contribution in practice to what is truly a special type of public servant in practice. And I would like to say that I have dreamed a few times about the day that Thabo will be able to join the National School of Government to go and train government communicators and civil servants generally nationwide on the art of communication and building strong and sound relations with the media, but just also on how just to be a good public servant. And he left us before he could do something so profound, because the National School of Government is very important for our democracy. It's very important for our government. We need the training of our public servants. We need the training of public officials. We must go to school. Ministers, MECs, Premier, we must go to school. Mayors, councillors, it must be permanent. And that's the mark of a true cadre. President Motlanthe spoke about that. So Thabo also understood the teething problems of government regarding lack of implementation and the pathologies of administration, such as problems of incompetence, corruption, and just failure to follow up on things that have been announced. One thing about him is that he worked in Gauteng with Premier Shilowa, went to work at national government with President Motlanthe, worked at Tuli House with President Mbeki. Thabo knew the ins and outs. Thabo was a very good storyteller. So for every policy, he knew when did it start. President Mbeki said this about this, and then this was introduced. In the province is the same. This premier, this was introduced. He was a working archive. Every government policy. The good thing though, he would say, if we want to change because this has not worked, we just need to know why did it not work before we introduce. Because sometimes we know in government, ANC people like to introduce new things. It's almost like fashionable. You must always introduce new things without even an evaluation of the others. So Thabo was very careful, but he was very respectful. He'll talk to you very nicely. When he thinks, no, you don't understand that issue. And I always, there are MECC, I always, and DG, Baleni, and senior managers in my office, I always insisted that I need to hear Thabo. He wouldn't raise a hand. I always insisted, I need to hear what Thabo is going to say. And when he says that, he'd take long and give a story. He was getting old. He was becoming a very good storyteller. And many a times he'll start with the story of President Ntlante. You know, President Ntlante has told us this story, we were traveling, but he wants to tell his own story. And you could hear that he's aging. Every discussion he starts with a story. And you know it's going to be long. So, many a times he would say to me, Premier, these people, I don't know why they are getting such a simple thing wrong. What are they trying to do which will discredit this government? So when you discuss with him, DG, there's this thing, go and sort of, he comes, says, Premier, these people, you know when Thabo says these people, you must just know that those people are on his wrong side. And wrong side in terms of doing the right things and doing things right. So we are eternally grateful to the Masebe family for this emblematic figure in our administration, in government, and in our country. There are many things where you can see Thabo's mark in our initiatives in Gauteng, Ntirisano program. Thabo gave this community outreach program the name. Now so it's called Ntirisano, so it's like Imbizo, community outreach program, and it is Thabo who named it Ntirisano. So work together. Today I understood, so Thabo has got some lineage in understanding the language. Abshe and Bagaina. Now I understand why he had such fluency of, he's got the roots there. He was part of many developments of new ideas, including how to make sense of those. The open tender system. These ideas will start somewhere else. The township economic development, it will start somewhere else. But Thabo will get us to make this clear and address his 5 questions. So we can communicate these ideas. But he was also part of managing difficult issues in our province. And as the obituary says, life as a demanding tragedy. The PPE corruption. He was very central on how these things must be dealt with a great deal of honesty and truthfulness and a great deal of empathy. Let's face the problem when there is a problem. Let's not dodge it. So his greatness was really that he was forthright and really firm in pointing out malafide motives. Thabo was a very reluctant administrator. He loved just staying in communication. And I came to understand, why is he so reluctant with administration, acting DG, and said, no, you know, Premier, I have a mistrust of the bureaucracy and civil servants. They are always up to something. He had this, he says, they mistrust. So, if I'm in charge of the administration, I'm likely to sign a document that puts me in trouble. Because someone down there had hatched out a plan and make it appear nice and then brought it to me to sign, and I must take accountability when I've signed it. Those are some of the pathologies of administration and government, which he was very keen to sort them out. So our acting DG, master communicator and editor-in-chief is gone. But Thabo was not just a civil servant. Many speakers have said, like James A. Baldwin argues, he was a man of his time, circumstance, history, and that's what made him, but he was more than that. And all of us are more than that. So he was shaped by that generation of young lions and the youth leaders who fought ferocious battles. He was a student activist who rose to the highest ranks of Azaso, Psycho, and the Youth League. And Jerindo, Lulu Johnson, Malusi Gigaba, and Phoebe Potgieter today and earlier in the week testified about how dependable and trusted Thabo was amongst the death defiers, the young lions. I met Thabo at Tefluop. And what was he doing there? He was going around helping students who needed a bursary from the EAP with Reverend Ngomani. And I must say today to the Masebe family and to the youth leaders and the young lions, I was one of the beneficiaries when I was at Tefluop of Thabo's bursary. Because you are talking about these people he helped. Thabo always wants evidence. Where are they? You say, I helped them. Where are they? Why don't they tell the story themselves? I am one of them. I was a student activist there. And he did many. He was going around doing that. Joe Matebula would testify to this. So I'd like to conclude by saying, in Thabo we had a true cadre. The public service has lost a dedicated cadre of a special type of a public servant. And I know sometimes, even in the ANC, this word cadre is a swear word. And we want to accept that, no, cadre is wrong. No. A cadre and a public service, this gets used in the army, it gets used in the police, in other systems, it gets used in the civil service. A cadre is not someone given a job they can't do because they know nothing about, because they were appointed, because they know somebody. That's not a cadre. A cadre is someone properly prepared with very specific skills, equipped, and given assigned responsibilities until they are equal to that task where they are deployed. There must always be preparation. There must always, yes, some of it is specialized training depending on where you are going to be deployed. If you are in the police, you can't have somebody at the next rank when they've not been prepared for that rank. So this thing called cadre deployment, which is being discredited, is actually cadre misdeployment. It's the misdeployment, and that thing called cadre is the corruption of the word cadre. It's not a swear word. A cadre is always about somebody equipped, prepared, trained, experienced, and assigned the task that they are equal to. So that is a cadre. So I'm sure Thabo could explain this. Thabo, I'm using the word cadre today. I've tried to explain it here. You must be satisfied. And if Thabo is not satisfied, I'm in troubles. So I would like to conclude by returning to Maya Angelou. And in the last stanza of The Great Tree Has Fallen, she says, when great souls die after a period of peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses are restored, never to be the same. Whisper to us. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. We are better people because Thabo existed. We emerged from the dark ages of apartheid because Thabo existed. And we can be better. Our country can even be better. We can be better people ourselves. Our movement can be better. And trust among citizens and government can be restored. social justice and genuine equality can be achieved. Corruption can be ended. A better future for our children and an economy that serves the interest of all can be built. May the period of peace and healing and renewal bloom in the family of Masebe. Farewell, DG. You have run your race. Robala ka kgotso. Glow, big tree, a great soul. Re a leboga. Nah.
Re a leboga mo premier ka mantswe a kgothatso. Ke na jwale se re fihlile mosebetsing wa rona, re tlo kapa lesolo la rona go ya leetong la bofelo, mme ke tlo etsa ka tsela tsena. Ke tlo bitsa all the pallbearers from the state SAPS to come forward and take their position, followed by the bearers from the South African Police Service also to come forward and take their space, and then requesting the marshalling officer S. Mukise to tell us more about this funeral as to from here where we go and what is expected from us. Thank you.
To the reverends present here, the family, the former president, President Motlanthe, the premier, MECs present here, all protocol observed. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mkhize. I will be the marshalling officer of the day of this procession here. I'll request that during the procession, this is how we are going to form up. It will be, part A will be the leading detachment, followed by the reverend, followed by the guard of honor, followed by the bearers as well as the pallbearers. We therefore ask that, with due respect to the family, that we request 2 vehicles from the family that will be following the hearse, because of the procedure or the procession that is too long for the marshalling officer to be audible to the guard of honor. We will request that 2 vehicles from the family will follow. I was told that we are going to use the door on my left. So I request that the chief mourner, our former president, will be following the procession when we leave here with the family as well as our premier. I thank you. Our bearers will be Warrant Officer Molife, Warrant Officer Nkonzo, Warrant Officer Letwaba. Warrant Officer Tamai. Warrant Officer Sibuyi. Warrant Officer Mtunga. Warrant Officer Mchabi. And Warrant Officer Msimango. Let us take your positions. Our pallbearers will be Brigadier Litonyane, Brigadier Chibenga, Brigadier Makamata, Brigadier Mswele, Brigadier Mtotoba, Brigadier Makauka, Police bearers, you can join the pallbearers. I request that when we leave, the procession will be followed by the family as well as the President Motlanthe and the Premier. Thank you, sir.
General salute. Please stand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. One. Hip.